ticker tape thing outside of our building.
What did it say?
And I see this potential blockbuster deal between you and Bradley Beal that may take you from Phoenix to Washington and vice versa. I was surprised. What are your first thoughts on that?
I was surprised, too. I found out on the plane yesterday flying here for this. You know, in this league, anything can happen, so you just figure out what's next.
You literally found out on the plane?
Absolutely.
Wow.
It's JP with the Golden State Warriors. Now back to the Morning Roast with Bonte Hill and Joe Shasky.
Will Jordan Poole be traded while he's hanging out in London on his birthday? Wow, Chris Paul on Good Morning America today with Michael Strahan, Robin Williams, and my guy found out on a flight that he was getting traded to the Washington Wizards. And that may not be the end of it. They're trying to finalize the deal. Bradley Beal, though, is a key figure. He's going to Phoenix. Chris Paul, Andrew Shamet going over to Washington, several second-round picks and pick swaps. And that may not be the end of it. Looks like the Wizards may buy out Chris Paul, and he may go back to the Clippers. Who the hell knows in today's NBA? But let's talk to Bomani Jones. We love him here on the Morning Roast on 95.7 The Game. You see him all over ESPN, but the Right Time podcast with Bomani Jones and the Game Theory on HBO Max, which is I'm enjoying because he had to own Jake Paul there. I love that from you, Bomani, to put him in his place before he lost that fight against Fury. But Bomani, good to talk to you here in the Bay Area. Our fans love you, and let's just start right there, Bo. Chris Paul to Washington, Bradley Beal to Phoenix. It doesn't move us per se because I think the big three thing with Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, I don't see it working out in the long run. What does that trade do for you?
They just picked up a dude that makes $1 million a game.
Must be nice.
Somehow I think that part. Well, I mean, the thing about Beal to me, and I think he's a good player, but I feel like he's one of these guys that we talk about more than people actually watch. It was a very similar situation when Chris Bosh went to Miami. Not that Chris Bosh wasn't great, but you read those stats, but you wasn't watching the Raptors play. And since you're not watching the Wizards play, you don't notice that Brad Beal hasn't played 60 games since 2019.
Mm-hmm.
So you are trading Chris Paul, and the reason to trade Chris Paul is that Chris Paul can't stay healthy, not because Chris Paul can't play anymore. Well, you're trading him for a guy who hasn't played 50 games in 4 years and costs $50 million a year. This doesn't do it for me. I think the West is really Denver and then everybody else as of this point, but I also think that given what the Suns gave up, okay, well, that's what you get, right? Like, if you get Brad Beal for what they gave up, then you probably do it. Shout out to the Ishbia guy. I like seeing an owner that's willing to recklessly spend money. Like, I think that's a macro level good.
Where do you think the Warriors stack up? You said that obviously it's Denver and then everybody else. I mean, Warriors got throttled by Anthony Davis and the Lakers. So where do you think they kind of stack up right now with their current roster?
Well, I think the biggest problem that the Warriors have, and I imagine you guys have talked about this in hushed tones up there, because you love the guy so much. But what exactly are you supposed to do with Klay Thompson at this point? Because, I mean, in the postseason, he didn't give it to you, right? Like, I think that people have had unrealistic expectations since he came back on a dude coming back off an ACL tear and an Achilles who's now in his 30s. You can never reasonably assume that a guy like that is going to come back this season better than he was last season. And the last time we saw him, he was bad. And so as long as that team has to depend on him to get things done, they're not going to probably be able to bring back DiVincenzo because of the salary cap. But while he's not a great player and he's not Klay Thompson, he matters for that team. What version of Draymond Green is going to come back and are you going to have going as each year passes? At what point, or does the point come where you actually get something out of Kuminga and Moody? I don't see much cause for optimism for the Warriors at this point, just because I think the margins at the top of the West are so thin. And as of this moment, I don't have a reason to assume that they are going to be better this year than they were last year. And at the end of the season, I think you guys all finally had to come around to the idea that last year that team just wasn't good enough.
Yeah. No, Bomani Jones here on the Morning Roast on 95.7 The Game with Shasky and Bonte. And look, Bo, we talked about Klay a lot. We talked about Jordan Poole a lot. And we've also talked about Draymond Green and reports over the weekend from our brother Mark Spears from Manscaped.com that Draymond Green may opt out, but the Warriors hope to re-sign him. Now, what if Draymond walks into Joe Lacob and Mike Dunleavy Jr.'s office and say, hey, man, I'm going to opt out, but I want $30 million a year? I'm not comfortable with that if I'm a fan of this team and seeing what Draymond Green and the way he played against the LA Lakers. What's the perception of Draymond Green outside the Bay Area bubble? Because a lot of Warrior fans can't let go of Draymond due to the contributions to this organization over the last 11 years.
Yeah, I think he's in one of those situations where he is really, 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 really valuable to one team. I don't think that there will be this giant market out there for him, at least not for a deal of any length, right? Like, I think that if I'm another team, I might be interested in a 1 or 2 year deal with Draymond, right? They just kind of see how it goes, because that's another guy that I don't think is going to get better as this goes along. Like, by math, he should be like 33 or 34 at this point. I don't think you could be optimistic about where it's going to go with an undersized player as he gets older. But for the Warriors, you heard Steve Kerr say it, like, we can't play defense without him. He is such a game changer on defense that I have literally no idea what the Warriors look like without him. Because as you look at this roster, especially with Klay being older, where's the lockdown defender? Like, where's the guy that you're like, okay, we can go shut some people down? They don't have that dude. Draymond magically turns the whole team into a bunch of dudes like that. So it's one buyer, one seller, and they're just going to have to find a price that does not hurt the Warriors too much, but also doesn't leave Draymond feeling insulted.
Man, that's tough. That's a tough needle to thread. Well, what are your thoughts on Jordan Poole just in general? Because I feel like when people bring him up around here, it's either your team Draymond or your team Poole, and the truth is probably somewhere in between. But what do you think of Jordan Poole as a player?
Well, where I try to be fair to him, because last year wasn't it, right? Like, we would all, like, agree. Last year wasn't it for Jordan Poole. But to be fair to him, he's a young guy, and they were coming off the championship, and we all know the adjustment for players coming off a championship can be very, very difficult as they figure out their place. They threw the big money in front of him, and Draymond hit him in the face in front of everybody. He's the guy, like, I remember when I was in college, and I think everybody else probably, if you went to college or even high school, will tell you about this dynamic. You know how you wind up where you get a crew of people, and there's always one dude that is at least technically in the crew, but everybody in the crew takes turns banging on that one dude, right? Like, that becomes your role in the crew, is you're the guy in the crew that everybody actually picks on.
Right.
I feel like Jordan Poole became that. Like, he's the new guy in this. He's the one that got the money. There are all the levels that come with that, and some of the old guys and how they feel about the very idea about trying to do this with the young guys in the first place instead of trying to trade for veteran help. Like, I imagine that was a very difficult situation for him to be in the first place. However, he's a pretty good player who wound up getting a contract that I think jumps off the page at people, but is really pretty good player money now at this point. Like, $30 million a year, that's about what, like, pretty good players get. But I do wonder if that championship run inflated for people just how good he actually is. Because if he was playing like he was and had not gotten the contract extension, it doesn't sound like this. But he got the extension, and Draymond didn't. Therefore, it does.
Wow, Bomani Jones here on the Morning Rush on 95.7. You're basically saying he was the Mario Chalmers of the Golden State Warriors. Remember that he used to pick on Mario Chalmers, LeBron, and Bosh? Yeah. It felt like he was yelling at him all the time at half court, Mario, Mario, Mario. And he saved your asses in Game 4 against OKC. Sticking on this Jordan Poole.
But here's the thing, though. There was warmth to it with the way they treated Mario Chalmers. Like, that was his place in the team and everything else. But those guys really like Rio. I'm not sure these guys really like Jordan Poole.
So can you see this team bringing both of them back, though? Because we're here in the bubble. We're around the team all the time, and the friction on this team all season long. There's a cloud hovering over this team no matter what. You could just feel it if you watch this team every single game. Can you bring both of those dudes back in the same locker room, Jordan Poole and Draymond Green? Because you got punched in TMZ, and over 50 million people didn't watch this punch, and everybody talks about it. Everybody, every single day. Can you imagine a locker room with these two in it next year for the Golden State Warriors?
I could see you bringing the two of them back, but the question I have is, are the problems with either of those guys simply localized to the two of them? Like, how does everybody else feel about Jordan Poole on that team, right? Like, that's the one that I have the question about. So I think it's less about can you bring those two back, is that I think you have to ask individually, can you bring Draymond Green back? And I think that leads to basketball questions. And with Poole, you have that same other thing, and that leads to basketball questions. Like, I can't imagine how mad Jordan Poole was at the end of that one game. I can't remember which one it was, but where he took that 30-footer late when the ball got thrown to him, and it was like, yo, it didn't get back to Steph, when nobody should have thrown him the ball in the first place, given the spacing and where he was like, oh, snap, and then put it up. Like, those things are always his fault, and I don't think that that's necessarily about Draymond. Like, I think they're going to need to have a macro level come to Jesus here about, everything that happened last year. And if this organization is everything that people tell us that it is, then they should be able to fix it.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, go back to the 2019 NBA draft, because right now Warrior fans are losing their minds. We've basically traded for every single player. I wrote down a list. There's like 70 names on here. Warrior fans are out of their mind. And just two guys that I'm thinking about, because we want to trade every young player. A couple years ago, Zion Williamson, John Morant. It felt like everyone in the league would have traded for either one of them. They go 1 and 2 in the draft. Right now, they both have very separate issues. Who would you want if you're Team X trying to salvage one of their careers? Zion or Ja?
If I'm running a team, I am waiting to find the dip on Zion Williamson, and I am buying enthusiastically on him. And I have a similar argument for him that I would have if I was trying to get on John Morant. And I just think that Zion at his best in the NBA, and we have seen him be very good. Like, forget, I think he was second team all NBA when he was 21 years old, right?
30 and 12 he was averaging at one point.
Yeah, like, we've seen more from him at this point in his career, or similar to what we saw from Joel Embiid at this point in his career, right? Like, I think he can be, I just think that there's still a chance for him to be impactful. But for both of them, I ask this question. What do you think is more likely? That these guys grow up, or that Jaylen Brown learns to dribble? Because I think Jaylen Brown learning to dribble is far more unlikely. But there's a league full of teams that would jump on the idea of getting Jaylen Brown, and Jaylen Brown's inability to dribble is as big a holdup as Zion Williamson's everything else. So what I look at with Zion, and I wonder, as you hear more and more about like his relationship with that organization and everything else, I feel like a guy like him, something's going to have to happen to shock him into place and just be like, hey, man, you're going to have to take this a lot more seriously, because by every account that I have received, the biggest issue with Zion is that it's clear he doesn't take this seriously. John Morant seems to very much so take the basketball stuff seriously. He just does really stupid things when he's not playing basketball. But, like, if I'm Portland and the idea is that we're going to keep Dame, or we're trying to keep Dame, and somehow I could get Zion Williamson for the number 3 pick in the draft, I'd do that in a heartbeat. I don't think twice. But somebody got to be the one to get in his ear and be like, hey, this is what we got to do. I personally would feel confident that Damian Lillard and Chauncey Billups could be the pair of people that could get through to him in that capacity. There is nobody in New Orleans who has the gravitas, I think, to be able to get through to him. But somebody's going to have some real talks with him about what it takes to truly produce in the NBA. Because I could be wrong here. You tell me if I'm tripping. I don't feel like people like being laughing stocks.
No.
And he is a laughing stock right now, and it's all of his own doing. It can all be fixed by him. Now let's see if he does it.
Yeah, and then off the court stuff over what happened the last couple of weeks with the baby mama drama or whatever the hell's going on. I'm lost with that.
Look,
I try to stay,
man,
hey, Bo, I try to stay out of people's business, man. That ain't my lane.
No, I mean, I'd like to stay out of his business, but his business jumped in my face, right? Like, we can't act like we don't know what it is. The problem for him in this case, the only difference between him and lots of other people in his league is that this one got on Twitter and started wilding out.
Right.
That's really the only difference there. I give him credit. He ain't said a word about it. He's just out here like, all right, man, like kids, let them cry themselves to sleep. But that, I mean, it's not the wisest move in the world, but most of them cats wind up paying a 10-figure lesson in contraception.
Yeah, no doubt. And by the way, shout out to the New Orleans Pelicans Twitter account for posting a PR campaign for Zion. Hey, look, he's helping out the kids this summer. And he was smiling from ear to ear. Speaking of John Morant, we got Bomani Jones here on the Morning Roast on 95.7 The Game. I'm with you on Zion. What's the end game for John Morant? Does Memphis need to move off from him? Is 25 games enough of a suspension? How can we calm Potts down? Because I feel like he's a big enabler in this whole situation. How do we rectify John Morant, get him focused again on just basketball, not doing this dumb stuff, IGN Live with toy guns or real guns, whatever the hell it is? I mean, come on, Ja.
Well, one thing that's interesting is like the father enabler part, where I have had that question at various points, and I think I saw Jalen Rose say it first. It's really, really difficult for your daddy to be your daddy in that capacity when you paying his bills, right? Like, once your daddy doesn't have a job, your daddy's not in charge here anymore. You know, like once his whole job is being your daddy, then he's not. There's only but so much that he can say. I look at Zion's daddy, and if you saw that ridiculous speech that he made at the thing that Zion was doing for the kids, that's the guy that I worry more about as far as enabling goes and everything else. But with Ja, yeah, this could be taken care of. Like apparently he's found new people to hang out with, even though I doubt very seriously it's those guys' fault. And I think it's fair to ask the question if he's got some core issues that need to be dealt with that are not simply about stop playing with things that look like guns and demonstrate a little bit better judgment. Because I think you saw the thing on TMZ about him with the gun being a lighter. And I had been told weeks ago that was his excuse, is that it wasn't a gun, it was actually a lighter, just a lighter that looks like a gun. And I asked this question sincerely. Why in the world would you want something that looked like a gun but ain't a gun?
I don't buy it.
Yeah. And then the lighter.
No. No, I've seen the video of the lighter. It's a lighter. That makes it even dumber than actually being a gun. Because at least if it's a gun, if you get in trouble, you can kill somebody.
Right.
Like, all this can do is get you in trouble or get a ha-ha from somebody in a room or whatever it is. Now, regardless of whether or not it was a gun, he wanted the people on the internet to believe that it was a gun, and that's the problem, right? And that's why this becomes suspension-worthy. And as much as people can try to do their whataboutisms and their Second Amendment stuff and everything else, this is bad for business and it's dangerous for him. And so I don't really have any problem with any punishment that the league decided to enact in that place. But I think these boys are also 22 years old, carrying a level of weight that is hard for us to understand, but also neither of these two guys have been primed for stardom like a lot of other people do. Like, the thing that we don't give LeBron James nearly enough credit for is that dude came in the league 20 years ago at 18 and still has the same crew that he had from the very beginning, and they all out here flourishing. They all out here making money, and he has never been in any sort of situation like this. It is the most amazing thing that he built a whole operation around him as a teenager and figured out how to make it work the whole way. The thing about both of these South Carolina boys is Zion was not a dude who was on the AAU circuit and really tied up in that. Like, he was not being prepped for what the next level was in the ways that a lot of these guys are. Ja Morant is a late bloomer who came out of nowhere. He was not prepped for everything that came with this. And then they look up and all of a sudden they have all this superstar responsibility, and all either of them really seem to know was like small town life. And in various ways, they both kicking it like they still live in small towns.
Wow, Bomani, man, we could have you on all day, but I know you got to run here, man. Good stuff. We're interested to hear what Mike Dunleavy Jr. has to say today at 11 o'clock as he was named the GM of the Golden State Warriors. Big decisions to make. Draymond Green opting in, opting out, who knows? Jordan Poole, Klay Thompson, all that stuff. So, Bo, keep it up, man. We'll talk to you soon, man. Thanks for spending some time with us here on the Morning Roast.
Hey, just tell me right fast, how old do you feel that Mike Dunleavy Jr. is now somebody's general manager?
Oh, my gosh.
I booed him.
Now.
Yeah,
I booed him when he was a Warrior.
I mean, people are still scarred because he's a player. They don't want him as a GM because of the way he played 4+ seasons.
And now I'm making arguments for why he'll be successful.
Right. We're just
full character.
Hey, Bomani, we're holding on to that national championship game when he hit the 3 straight threes against Arizona and beat Gilbert Arenas and them boys.
Hold on. When you say we hold no, okay. I thought you were saying you was a Duke fan.
No. I'm not a Duke fan.
He's a Florida State fan.
No, I am a Paulo
worse.
Banchero fan. Yeah, don't ask me how I'm a Florida State fan, but I am a Florida State fan. Go figure.
Okay. I was just about to say this is going to be grand opening, grand closing of me appearing on this program.
One of my best friends is a Duke fan, though. We saw him out here a couple of years ago.
He's also a LeBron fan. So.
No. Paulo Banchero, all that stuff. Hey, Bo, man. We'll have you back on, man.
Buddy.
Thanks.
All right, man. You guys have a good one.
You too. Bomani Jones, man. Said a lot there. Man, a lot to dive through. There.